Today, we're diving into the incredible work of a psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl. He developed a philosophy called logotherapy that gets at one of the deepest human questions there is, a question he was forced to answer for himself in the absolute horror of a Nazi concentration camp. All right, let's get into it.
So this is it, right? This is the central question. And it's not just some abstract philosophical idea. It's a question that hits us all, in moments of grief or loss or when we're at our lowest point. Frankl's entire life's work was really an attempt to answer this, not just in theory, but in the most practical way imaginable.
Frankl often quoted this line from Nietzsche, and it really became his guiding light. It's the core of everything we're about to talk about. The idea is simple, but so powerful. If you have a strong enough reason to live, a real purpose, you can withstand almost anything.
Now, to really get this, we have to look at Frankl's own story. See, he wasn't just some academic thinking these thoughts up in a comfortable office. His ideas were forged in fire, tested at the absolute limit of human suffering during the Holocaust. When prisoners arrived at the camps, everything was taken from them. I mean, everything. Their clothes, their wedding rings, their family photos. Frankl himself had his life's work, a scientific manuscript he'd hidden in his coat, just tossed aside like trash. The whole point was to erase who you were, to make you feel like nothing. This was Viktor Frankl. He wasn't Dr. Frankl anymore. He wasn't a husband or a son or a brother. He was just a number. His entire identity, gone, replaced by a few digits tattooed on his skin. But here's where it gets incredible. In that place of total despair, Frankl noticed something. Even when every single external freedom was stripped away, there was one thing the guards couldn't take, one thing they couldn't touch: his inner freedom. The freedom to choose his attitude about what was happening to him. In this realization, it came to him in a really powerful way. One day, while freezing on a forced march, he started thinking about his wife, Tilly. He imagined her face, had conversations with her in his mind. The thing is, he had no idea if she was even still alive. But it didn't matter. He realized that love was something that went beyond just physical presence. It was this inner connection that gave him a reason to keep going. So after he was liberated, Frankl went back to Vienna and started to formalize these insights. He developed a whole new school of psychotherapy, one that didn't obsess over your past, but instead helped you focus on your future. He called it logotherapy. Logotherapy is actually known as the third Viennese school. You had Sigmund Freud, who focused on our will to pleasure, and Alfred Adler, who focused on the will to power. But Frankl came along and said, no, you're both missing the most important thing. He argued that our deepest, most fundamental drive is our will to meaning. And Frankl saw that you didn't need to be in a concentration camp to feel lost. He noticed that modern life was creating its own kind of quiet suffering, this widespread feeling of emptiness, of meaninglessness. He called it the existential vacuum. It's that feeling of having enough to live by, but having nothing to live for. He even had a special name for a symptom of this: Sunday neurosis. You know that feeling? The week is over, the work is done, all the distractions stop, and suddenly this wave of emptiness or dread washes over you. You're left alone with that nagging question: wait, is this it? Is this all my life is? So, okay, how do you fight that existential vacuum? Frankl said there are three main ways to find meaning. First, through creating something or doing a deed, basically what we give to the world. Second, through experiencing something or encountering someone, what we take from the world, like beauty or nature or love. And third, and this is maybe his most profound point, is the attitude we choose to take when we're faced with suffering we can't change. And logotherapy has some really interesting practical tools. One is called paradoxical intention. Let's say you're terrified of sweating in public. The therapist would tell you to go out and try to sweat more than anyone has ever sweated before. It's a humorous trick that often breaks the anxiety cycle. Then there's de-reflection, which is all about shifting your focus off of yourself and onto other people or a meaningful goal. And finally, Socratic dialogue, where a therapist helps you find your own answers through gentle questioning instead of just telling you what to do. Now, Frankl's story is, without a doubt, one of the most inspiring you'll ever hear. But to really understand the full picture, we've got to look at some of the critical perspectives and historical details that add more layers to the man and his work. Okay, so the biggest critique comes from scholars like Lawrence Langer.
His argument was that by focusing so much on finding meaning, Frankl's story risks softening the absolute, random, meaningless horror of the Holocaust. It could unintentionally imply that the people who didn't survive just failed to find the right attitude, which is a really difficult conclusion to sit with when you're talking about systematic genocide.
There are also a few historical facts that are important for context. Frankl was actually only in Auschwitz for a few days before being moved. He spent most of his time in subcamps of Dachau. And years before his own deportation, while working in a hospital in Vienna, he performed some experimental brain surgeries on suicidal patients that are, by today's standards, ethically very questionable. Now, this doesn't erase his insights from the camps, but it paints a more complex, more human portrait of the man. And, the conversation around his work is still evolving. Some academics today even propose that there's a hidden fourth path to meaning in his writing, what they call coexistent values. This is the idea that we find meaning simply by being in community and in relationship with other people.
So after all that, the inspiration, the critique, the complexity, why do Frankl's ideas still hit so hard today? Well, I think it's because that existential vacuum he talked about, it feels bigger and more common than ever. I mean, look at this. A survey at Johns Hopkins University asked college students what their number one goal in life was. A whopping 78% said it was finding a purpose and meaning. That ranked way higher than making a lot of money. Frankl's will to meaning is alive and well. And his work is incredibly practical. The principles of logotherapy are used today to help people with everything from job burnout and anxiety to dealing with grief or a serious illness. It gives people a real framework for building resilience and finding purpose when life gets tough. Ultimately, this is the big shift in perspective he asks of us. He says we need to stop asking, what do I want from life, and start asking, what is life asking of me? Meaning isn't some treasure you go out and find. It's something you build moment by moment through how you respond to whatever life throws at you. In the end, Frankl's legacy isn't just a story of survival. It's a challenge to all of us. He showed that meaning is always possible, even the deepest suffering, by choosing our attitude and committing to something bigger than ourselves. So, the question he leaves for us is this: what is life asking of you right here, right now?